Okay, so today we're going to really dive deep into something pretty crucial that's been happening in India's government.
Yeah.
It has to do with this. Well, it's basically the transformation of the Ministry of Home Affairs, the MHA.
Right.
And I think for our listeners, especially the ones who are really, dialed into trying to understand where India is headed in terms of, its future stability and its development, this whole shift within the MHA is something they've really got to wrap their heads around.
For sure.
Especially those preparing for the UPSC exams.
Yeah, big time.
Because it represents a change, a pretty significant change.
Yeah.
From a ministry that was primarily focused on reacting to events to one that's now really taking this proactive approach to driving reforms.
Huge shift.
Yeah, it's a huge shift. And we're going to really unpack all of this. And we're going to draw on a recent analysis that was done in the Hindu that really lays it all out. So I guess to kick things off, when you think about the MHA, traditionally, like what sort of comes to mind?
Well, what's really striking to me is the scope of its role. For decades. If you thought about the Ministry of Home Affairs, what image popped into your head?
Right.
It was probably an organization constantly dealing with a crisis.
Right.
Putting out fires left and right.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Like just all those periods of just intense violence in Kashmir.
Yeah.
The insurgencies in the Northeast.
Yeah. So
persistent and complex.
Yeah.
And then the Naxalite movement spreading through central and eastern India.
Right. And those weren't just, headlines in the news. Yes. They really shaped how the MHA operated.
It's how it was perceived.
Yeah, and how people saw it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's important to keep in mind, you mentioned all those conflicts. The human cost of that is tremendous.
Absolutely.
And, for years, the ministry's identity was really defined by how it responded to those threats. And as you said, it was reacting.
And that reactive stance, it didn't stop with just deploying forces.
Right.
Right? Like sending in the Central Armed Police Forces when the state police were overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It went deeper.
Yeah.
It influenced the laws that were put into place.
Right. And that's a really, important element here. Yeah. Especially for those who are interested in,
the legal side.
The legal history of India. Like you look at some of the landmark pieces of legislation that came about. Tayade.
Yeah.
POTA.
Yep.
Even the creation of the NIA, the National Investigation Agency.
Right.
These were all direct responses to really specific and often tragic events.
Right.
And, while those measures were absolutely seen as necessary at the time to deal with,
immediate threats.
Immediate security threats.
Yeah.
I think being in that constant cycle of reaction kind of meant that.
Developing
a truly, long-term and comprehensive
comprehensive strategy.
Yeah. Strategy for security kind of.
Took a backseat a little bit.
Like a backseat a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, when you have frequent changes in leadership within a ministry, especially one that's as politically charged as this one.
For sure, yeah.
It's got to be. It just adds another layer of complexity to trying to maintain that strategic vision.
Yeah, maintaining any kind of long-term plan.
Yeah.
When you've got that instability at the top is tough.
Yeah.
Especially with something as complex as national security.
Yeah.
It's a challenge.
It's a real challenge, yeah.
Yeah.
So the question then is, how do you break free from that cycle?
Right. And the analysis in the Hindu points to a real shift in the last few years, a deliberate shift.
Yeah.
Particularly with, Prime Minister Modi's emphasis on this.
It's
Reform, perform, and transform idea.
The slogan.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
it wasn't just a slogan, though.
It wasn't just a slogan. It was a real signal of a change in the MHA's objectives.
At their core,
yes. And so how would you describe this shift in terms of, where the focus is now?
Well, I think it's really shifted towards being prepared, being proactive.
Proactive.
Structural preparedness.
Yeah.
It's about building this.
Yeah.
A robust security architecture.
Right.
That doesn't just handle crises when they pop up, but is designed to prevent them in the first place.
Right. So it's not just about,
That's a whole different approach.
It's not just about waiting for something to happen, then figuring out how to respond.
Right. Exactly.
It's about thinking ahead.
Thinking ahead.
So what does that actually look like in practice?
So we're talking about strengthening the laws that are already in place, modernizing the agencies themselves,
right?
Integrating technology in a big way, and maybe most importantly, making sure intelligence is shared effectively between agencies.
So it's a very sort of comprehensive,
It is.
multi-pronged
It is.
approach. And if you want to see this commitment in action, I mean, just look at all the legislative activities since 2019. I mean, over 27
Remarkable.
legislative reforms. I mean, that's pretty incredible in such a short span of time.
In a short time, yeah.
It really shows that there's a real push to, update and strengthen the legal framework around internal security.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some of these changes they're very specific.
Oh, yeah.
Like the amendments to the NIA Act and the UAPA.
Unlawful Activities Prevention Act.
Yeah. These weren't just, minor tweaks.
I don't know.
They were going after, they were aiming to get a really clear definition.
Definition of terrorism.
Yeah.
Legally robust.
Which is obviously fundamental.
Yeah, which is.
Yeah.
Which is obviously fundamental.
Yeah.
But then there's also this focus on really dismantling the financial networks that allow these terror organizations to thrive.
Cut off the money. You gotta hit them where it hurts.
You gotta hit them where it hurts. Yeah, and that's often the most effective way to really weaken these groups over time.
Long term, yeah.
Yeah, in the long run.
What's interesting to me is that these legislative changes aren't happening in isolation.
Right.
Right. They're actually being implemented at the same time as these really concrete institutional reforms.
Right. It's not just passing new laws.
Yeah.
It's about making the agencies themselves more effective on the ground.
Right.
So you've got the expansion of the NIA.
Right.
The revamping of the Multi-Agency Center, the MAC.
Yeah.
Which is key for intelligence sharing.
Right.
And then this push for a formal duty to share intelligence between different agencies.
Which is huge.
These are concrete steps to improve coordination and build a stronger intelligence network.
And all of that is really designed to, prevent these things from happening.
From happening in the first place, yeah. Proactive.
So, one thing that I found really fascinating in this Hindu analysis is how India's MHA, it integrates both governance and security functions.
It's unique.
Which is good. It's not always the case.
You don't see that everywhere.
No, you don't see that everywhere. In other parts of the world, those two are very distinct.
Very separate.
Separate spheres.
Yeah.
But here, it's very integrated.
Well, and you can trace that back. If you look at the Constitution articles 355, 256, and 356, they actually give the MHA a really significant mandate to play this central role in coordinating between the center and the states, making sure the country is stable, and upholding that whole idea of federal governance.
It's very much an Indian model.
Yeah, it is. It's a very specific and integrated model for how the state works.
And it's not just theoretical. We've seen actual changes in how the MHA is structured.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They've given up responsibility for some areas.
Like Northeast Affairs.
Northeast Affairs and Justice.
Yeah.
But they've taken on new ones.
Like disaster management.
Disaster management. Narcotics control. Right.
So it's a constant effort to really streamline what they do.
Streamline.
Consolidate.
And
become more effective.
Be more effective. Yeah.
And I think for our listeners who are preparing for those UPSC exams, it's really worth paying attention to these initiatives that are specifically designed to make law enforcement more professional across the country.
Yeah, because they're trying to build a more modern and specialized law enforcement system.
So what are some examples of those?
So you've got things like the establishment of the National Forensic Sciences University, the NFSU, the rollout of the Crime and Criminal Tracking Network and systems.
The CCTNS.
CCTNS, which is all about modernizing police records, information sharing, and then this push to separate forensic investigation from general investigative duties within the state police forces.
So it's about making things
more specialized.
More specialized.
More efficient.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have these 3 new criminal laws. The Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, the Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita, and the Bharatiya Saksha Adhinyam.
Right.
I mean, this is a huge overhaul of the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
I mean, replacing laws that basically go all the way back to the colonial era.
Wow.
So that says a lot about, their long-term vision.
Long-term vision.
For security.
Yeah.
And governance.
And governance in general.
And all of this reform, I mean, it doesn't come cheap.
No, it doesn't.
And the Hindley analysis really underscores the significant budgetary support that the MHA has gotten.
In recent years.
In recent years, yeah.
I mean, the fact that their budget crossed that euro lakh crore mark in 2019.
Yeah.
And is now at 2.33 lakh crore for 2025.
That's a statement.
It's a statement.
Yeah.
That they're serious about this transformation.
Yeah.
And the fact that spending on paramilitary forces has almost tripled. I mean, come on. That's another big indicator of where their priorities are.
And this isn't just about throwing money at a problem.
No.
The analysis talks about the real impact this is having.
On the ground. Yeah.
A 70% decline in violence.
Yeah.
In regions that have been struggling with conflict for so long.
Jammu and Kashmir, the Northeast, the Naxal-affected areas.
That's huge.
It is. It's massive.
That has massive implications. I mean, when you start to see fewer instances of stone pelting in Kashmir.
Right.
Insurgency activity going down in the Northeast because of these peace agreements.
Right.
And this focus on social development in areas affected by Naxalism. It shows that this two-pronged approach of better security and targeted development is working.
It's yielding real results.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that there's a political and social dimension to this as well.
Absolutely. It's not just about law and order. It's about creating a more stable and inclusive India.
Decisions like the dilution of Article 370 and the integration of Jammu and Kashmir.
Big move.
And then this ongoing engagement in these regions.
Sociopolitical,
it all plays a part.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, especially those who are, hitting the books, gearing up for their UPSC exams.
Those UPSC aspirants.
What are the big takeaways here? I mean, what do they need to walk away with from this conversation?
I think the main thing is this. The MHA's evolution is a really clear example of a major shift in how India is handling internal security. It's moving away from just reacting to threats and becoming more proactive and strategic. And that's crucial for understanding the bigger picture of Indian governance and development.
It really is. And the key parts of this new approach, they're really clear.
Yeah.
Long-term strategic planning, consistency in legislation, better collaboration between agencies.
Crucial.
And a dedication to modernizing these institutions.
Modernization is key.
It's about being ready, anticipating threats, and building a nation that can withstand whatever comes its way.
Exactly. And I think it raises a bigger question for all of us. This shift towards proactive reform, could it be a sign of a deeper change in India's whole approach to governance?
Ooh.
What does it mean for the country's future, its stability, its growth, its place in the world? These are things to think about.
Those are some really thought-provoking questions. And for our listeners, if you want to go even deeper into this, remember, we've been discussing an analysis from The Hindu.
Great source.
So if you found this deep dive helpful,
especially for those UPSC exams,
please do like and subscribe to The Deep Dive for more in-depth analyses of important topics that are shaping India and the world.
And don't forget to leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And any questions you might have.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us.